Out the hiccups. If you guys are seeing a late buffer on the other end, um, we are working this thing out. This is our second live. Stay tuned. There's going to be more of these lives. But I got with me today. Some would consider to be a controversial activist in Oklahoma City area. Super Bowl Steve Hunt. Steve, welcome to This Is America podcast. How are you, sir?
Oh, just another fine day in the community. Happy to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
Uh, it's interesting. I'm not as controversial as some might think. There's just an isolated set of powerful people and their underlings that don't like me disrupting their con. Most
Mm,
people fucking love me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the
yeah.
dirty words. Right after that prayer we had, that's not
No,
very
you're good.
fitting, but yeah, I mean, if there were like an honest poll of people that love me and hate me, I'd be like, why is this guy not, running everything, But
Right.
that's not really how our culture works, and certain people are weighted more heavily than others and held to different standards. So, you asked about my background. I have to be brief because aspects of my background could lead to long episode length rabbit holes, but I don't know if I'd say blessed. I don't know, I'd say blessed if I was blessed because that word has kind of lost value. I've had a very interesting life, born at a very young age in Tulsa and then moved to Oklahoma City when I was 3. The first real episode in my life that led to who I am now was being on the white part of white flight when busing and all that started. And, there was this ideological fog amongst, the business class white Oklahoma City that you had to get out. And that was a really huge moment in Oklahoma City because you were taking the black kids away from their community, and then there was this irrational fear, and then a lot of white people had to go far northwest, and there were victims all around, because you didn't just fracture communities, you fractured, you know people working together and being together. I went from having friends named Demetrius to Troy and Lance, and we always think about how that moment hurt the black community, the East Side, ripping people out of schools where they were accountable and close and sending them 10 miles across town. It was very traumatic for them. But those of us that had to be rooted and then go northwest and start
Yeah.
this whole culture
Yeah.
of greed and exploitation and basically the forces that run everything where we were thrown into. And that was the early days of the Penn Square Bank. So not only were we uprooted from where we were, went to neighborhoods where everything was about to be fractured by the Penn Square Bank crisis. And so coming
That
up
was all
then was a big part.
that was all around in the
That was like
same time
early.
frame.
Yeah, yeah. A lot happening. Kind of like right now, just there's so
Mhm.
much happening and it's so hard to keep up with it. And so many people's lives are being affected. So after that, I graduated from Putnam City High School, worked a few years, and then left for Dallas. I had an incredible experience in Dallas, and I think it was important because when I was in Dallas in the mid to late '90s, it was exactly and precisely like Oklahoma City is now. It was following the copy and paste comeback city, blight by design. Oh, look at us, we're growing. Crappy apartments are being, slightly upgraded and triple, blah blah blah. So I saw that. From there, I went to Boston, spent some time in Boston, met a lot of influential people there. 9/11 happened. Went to Oklahoma State University after that. Got a master. Started working on a master's, writing for the paper. After that, went back to Dallas, Austin, Seattle. Ran for mayor. That's the abbreviated version. So I've been very lucky to have an enormous amount of life experiences. And what troubles me looking back at all the opportunities I've had, not because I was privileged, I mean, in a sense I was, as white male heterosexual, blah blah blah. But having the creative drive and the curiosity to be able to throw all my stuff in my car with $400 in cash and move halfway across country and see a lot of things.
That's right.
So that's kind of the scattered version of who I am, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm very fortunate to have had such a rich life. Not easy, but vast in experience and meaning.
Yeah. No, that's well said, man. You still got to go do it. And we'll get on to another episode about race and the privilege thing. But like you said, you loaded up everything. You went across the country. You still had to go do it. And what I like about that is you've been able to capture all this from your unique perspective. And so you've got this super perspective from so many different places that you've lived, and you're bringing it back home. But I wanted to go back to just kind of tell the people why I wanted to have you on, Steve. I consider you controversy because you don't think like the rest of the people. You are, everyone's walking this way, and if we're walking in a direct line, if we can imagine just walking in one direct line, millions of people, and we look over and we see Steve's ass. And Steve is like, hey, y'all going into a burning building. And so I've seen a lot of your videos online, man. I'm listening to what you're saying. I want to start with the Thunder. We got a big game tonight. If we take this game, obviously we're going to the finals. And our country, or excuse me, our state love our Thunder. But just like you, like I mentioned earlier, you're walking completely opposite of where we're at, and you're seeing the Thunder from a different perspective. Tell us a little bit about what you know about the Thunder on the private equity side of things, and does that hurt us? I know one thing that stood out to me that kind of wanted to have this conversation with you about the Thunder was when you said, hey, we've got to pay for I guess out of market games. And I thought that was a good point that you made, but do us a favor and touch on how you see the Thunder from your unique perspective, and then tell us a little bit more about how we can help you push to making the Thunder games more available for people that can't obviously afford to have those out of market packages.
The Thunder are a remarkable case study into the moment we're in, and just how nuanced things are, and how it would be impossible to engineer anything like this without complex systems theory, or just the Wedeco drive of our decaying systems of power. A lot of this seems so engineered, and in a sense it is, but in a lot of ways it's just the natural digression of a very big finance predatory based system that has countless ways to distract people from what's really happening. And I was a Thunder fan for as long as I could be, and I'm not anymore. Because I know way too much about the costs of this team, and this is an incredible team. I've been, the way that I distract myself from the madness for years has been macro management intense sports simulation games on the computer. I grew up playing Stratomatic baseball, and for years and years, that's just, I love getting on the computer and playing basketball simulation, baseball simulation. And this team is engineered exactly as I would engineer a team and have over the years. And like, just the perfection, the way they've developed it is so 180 from the ownership and their failing upward nature and their exploitation and their predatory behavior towards people's emotions and people's desires. And it's a powerful force. It's a powerful cudgel to change. And the things that it's enabled and the things that it's bringing about are huge. And, I don't want anyone to boycott and quit watching or whatever. What I would like is for people to understand, and it's such a nuanced history. I was involved from day one when it was announced that the team might come here and that they were going to need an upgrade to the Ford Arena. And I remember very clearly them saying that all they would do is require like $130 million upgrade to the Ford Center, and that would be it. I remember that very clearly. And we're reaching about 3.5 billion in handouts to Clay Bennett and his friends. And something like that, if a regular person did something like that and it was very transparent, I mean, it would have been intense. And there's so many things to bring up about this ownership group. And I think the most damning and most ignored is that CJAC, the group that took over control of Oklahoma County Jail, Clay Bennett was the head of that. Him and Jim Couch started that in about 2016. My theory is that in taking over the jail, I have a lot of documents of Clay Bennett using the Thunder as leverage to take out loans because, you know, it's never enough for someone like him. And that he took over the jail because he was in financial trouble with the Thunder, which I honestly believe, you know, because we've seen him ask for a new arena. We've seen him take over. They're about to take over ownership of the practice facility that we've spent $20 million to build for them and have paid for all the maintenance over the years. Nobody knows this, but in the consent docket in city council, there was something 2 months ago that we're going to sell it to him for a song, like probably 10 million when we could get 60 million on the open market for it. But couple that with the takeover of the jail, it becomes the deadliest jail in America. And you see the nature of the ownership, Clay Bennett, the people that benefit off of it, David Holt, who have been so wrong for so long. They're classic examples of failing upward. They're classic examples of idiots who are put in these lofty positions because idiots are easier to control by whatever the dynamics are that are controlling things.
Yeah.
And so the story of the Thunder is so incredibly nuanced and so incredibly egregious that there's almost like a somatic and psychological shutdown that happens with people when they even start to think about it. And they're like, they just step away.
Yeah.
And for some reason I've been given the, yeah, go ahead.
I think you mentioned it's some form of trauma in our discovery call, right? It's kind of like a trauma response when they hear that truth to how the Thunder really kind of established itself and how it's maintaining itself. So do you think that people that hear this truth reject it because of trauma, or is this, hey, I'm just a big ass fan and I don't care about nothing else but the Thunder winning?
It's a part of it, you know, and these systems of control are, I mean, you read the Bible or any religious tradition, it's just like, wow. And you know, it's the thief in the night. It's the type of thing that people won't pay attention to, and then it creeps up on you, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, how did this happen? And it's just, it's too obvious. But so last night there was a flock, get the flock out at the Unitarian Church. It's these flock cameras that are all over the city and all over the country. And there was a huge crowd. And there were James Cooper, Kamal Pennington, Joe Beth, a lot of community leaders, quote unquote. But at this point, it just felt like reactionary civic participation pizza party. You know, they had pizza. People just aren't looking out for the things that create the problems, you know, and we just become a reactionary society.
Right.
And, you know, one of my mentors, I consider to be a mentor, Chris Hedges, says picking up a cross is not supposed to be a pleasant experience. And, you know, making change is not supposed to be showing up to the Unitarian Church and having some pizza and listening to some speakers and patting each other and leaving. This stuff is hard. It's very hard. And that links to the Thunder. It was very, very, very hard to say anything against this organization. And they know that. And that's why they keep taking and taking and taking and taking. And they won't stop.
Interesting. Now, like I said, I'm a huge Thunder fan, and I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I think a lot of fans are like, "Hey, it doesn't matter. They're creating jobs. They're elevating our morale. Um, why does this even? Why should this concern me?" Now, my entrepreneurial spirit, whenever I hear myself ask that question, why should this concern me? I'm thinking to myself, how do I get a piece of that action? You know what I mean? Of
Hmm.
all the different business triangles that they've got going that kind of spread the money around, and I think this is actually a good segue to our next question. What we're talking about private equity at work here, right? Is that
Hmm.
fair to say? Um,
Hmm.
and I looked at the definition: private equity, an investment class where specialized firms raise capital from investors to buy private companies. Now we look at our country and we look at the wealth gap. It's like, hey, these private equity groups are building on all this old money. How can we lift the floor, the bottom 50% of Americans, and let them in on some of this action? Is that is that a fair question to ask, or do you think venture capitalists is something that is going to, or private equity is something that's going to save Oklahoma or ruin Oklahoma?
Oh no, I mean it's you have to understand what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, Private equity is birthed out of a firm called Drexel Burnham Lambert in the early 80s, started by a man by the name of Michael Milken. Michael Milken is known as the junk bond czar, who went to prison for what he did, and it's kind of complicated. I'm not going to explain the difference between what Milken was doing in private equity. The difference is mainly that private equity is very tweaked to the deregulation that's happened in the last 40 years to become perfectly legal version of what Michael Milken did to be thrown into prison.
Hmm.
Um, when that happened in the mid 80s, it created a diaspora of awfulness, sending all of the people that worked for him, Leon Black, Neil Aronson, and about 11 others, to go out and replicate what he did only legally. There was a book, Liar's Poker, by Michael Lewis years ago. He's the guy that wrote, what was the movie with the guy from The Office? So it's a book about what happened in the 80s, and he wrote it as an expose, and it ended up, in his own words, being a how-to manual. So it talked about all this exploitation and greed that happened in the 80s, and then rather than starting a revolution and creating a better society, it just taught people that, oh, I can do this too. And that's what happened from Michael Milken going to prison and all of his employees having to scatter. They said, well, okay, we had a good thing there, so let's find a way to do it legally and replicate it. And that's what Rourke Capital, who's taking over all the Oklahoma City restaurants. That's what Apollo Capital, who's taking over the Oklahoma City senior living facilities. Um, in You ask if like this is something that everyone else should get a piece of. Um, well, that's already happening. People saying, well, I guess this exists. Let's all try to get a piece of it. In 2025 or 2024, there was a con artist. I forget his name, but he has a fraudulent company out in California called the Black Unicorn Factory. And he's this guy that teaches people of color how to start a business and then sell it to private equity.
Hmm.
And he's got all these false evaluations. And this guy spoke at the 2024 NAACP Oklahoma conference. It was either 24 or 25.
Whoa.
And the man was a fraud of the most monumental proportions. I had a private conversation with my dear friend Connie Johnson about it,
Shout out
who
to Connie
is
Johnson.
a Penn grad, which is why the Democrat Party had to push her aside because she's not an idiot. Um, and she was like, "Oh, Steve, don't worry about it. We're just gonna have him speak. It's gonna be great. You need to." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh man.
The problem is that we have these decaying systems of power that we think if we just make them more diverse, it'll be fine. But we have a class of people who understand suffering. They understand systems of power. They understand how to do things differently. And instead of letting them take the lead on that knowledge and those ways of being, we're like, let's just integrate them into the system that kept them at bay for 400 years, and that's madness.
Yeah.
Because the only problem with our system isn't excluding a class of people from it. It's a horrifying system. It's an exploitive system that rewards takers and not makers, to use a phrase. And private equity, here's what private equity is. And here's the difference between private equity and venture capital. Private equity is best understood by the now insolvent Thunder broadcaster, FanDuel Sports, aka Main Street Sports. And I'll tell that story, and hopefully people will be able to understand what private equity is by how this happened. And it's kind of a complicated story, but I'm going to tell it because I think it will be the easiest way to make sense of what private equity is. And this is kind of a private equity model, not so much private equity, but it's the same thing under a different name. So in 2019, Disney purchased Fox. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
And when Disney purchased Fox, you remember Trump administration had issues with Disney. I don't know why, probably something stupid. And so he did what should happen, but not for the right reasons. Said, okay, you can buy Fox, but you have to get rid of the regional sports broadcasting aspect of it because you own ESPN. So they did that. They put the regional sports broadcasting up for sale. And, it was probably worth about $5-6 billion, something like that. The problem was that the age of cord cutting, a lot of their revenues came through cable, blah, blah, blah. So what happened, I'm going to try to explain this as best as possible. Sinclair Broadcasting, who's deeply connected to systems of power, started an LLC. They took a $9 billion loan and raised about $2 billion in capital and then purchased that for like double its value, which didn't make a lot of sense to people that don't know the inside baseball of how this private equity stuff works. Buying it for that much guaranteed that they would seize control and that they would be able to own it for 4 or 5 years, extract value through fees and various ways, and then go bankrupt 4 or 5 years later, which is what happened in 2023. They didn't pay back their $9 billion. They weren't, I don't know the exact way that they were able to hide money that they were making. So you remember it was Bally Sports that used to show the Thunder games, and then it became FanDuel. Okay, Bally was the original 2019 Sinclair Diamond Sports Group was the LLC they created to shield themselves from liability. And so Diamond Sports Group went bankrupt. And Bally Sports, the revived corpse, which was their asset being handed over to their creditors, aka their banker friends, who they used to seize control of this asset. They took control as about 6 or 7 different financial institutions who rebranded it as Main Street Sports Group, aka FanDuel Sports. And at that point, you saw people having to pay $20 a month streaming or have a high level package to be able to watch the team that they have been funding through their taxes for 17 or 18 years, which is a huge, egregious story that apparently I'm the only one that's talking about.
Right.
And for good reason, because if you're a news station, you talk about it. Okay, no more ads. Have a nice day. You can go to Dallas like Ashley Moss did when she talked about something like this. Okay, so over a little over a year, FanDuel, aka Main Street Sports, was in the same position. They couldn't service the debt. Well, they couldn't. They were the debtors. They couldn't pay off, what it cost to maintain this operation. So here's what happened. They tried to find an exit ramp, which was the point of the whole thing, the exit ramp. They were going to sell it to a group called DAZN, D-A-Z-N, which is a London financier and the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. They were planning to sell it to them for $15 billion and make $3 or $4 billion profit off of this thing that they just kind of like acquired out of this elaborate concoction of financialization. But this was a rare instance where no one wanted to buy it because they saw what a toxic asset it was. Now, normally, private equity firms, this is how they make all their money, is they take an asset like Sinclair took this asset, they run it for 4 or 5 years where they have like administration fees, different fees, they cut salaries, they cut operations, they extract wealth out of it. And if they can service the debt, they always purchase these things without about 20% of their capital and 80% debt.
That's
and
great.
if they can find a way to maintain that, their exit ramp will be an IPO. Like what's happening with all these Rourke restaurants, they're coupling them into a basket of restaurants, you know, Sonic, Jimmy John's, Subway, and they're hoping to service their debt by having an IPO. If you can go long enough, you have an IPO, or you just go bankrupt, or you sell to someone. It's all these wealthy financiers, usually prep school, Cassidy, McGinnis, Bermuda Triangle type people who are deeply connected to these networks of financier, and it can't go on forever. Like we see that the Thunder broadcaster, which also had 29 other teams in NHL, MLB, NBA, not finding a buyer. And that's a sign that this game is reaching its end.
Yeah.
And the fact that Oklahoma City is having this phony renaissance, even just the fact that we're having it, as some California investors I met told me, this place is the final frontier. And it's very telling that Oklahoma City is doing well because we're the last place that this wandering capital model of big finance exploitation is happening, you know, and I am very worried about what's coming next because we see the things that are being exploited by private equity, kids sports, senior living facilities.
Yeah.
They've waited and waited to do that because it's horrible, but they have no choice because when you build on an infinite growth model, you run out of things to exploit.
Right.
And they have run out of things to exploit. And that's like yesterday with the flock cameras. That's nothing more than a financial tool, a way to make money. ICE facility over on the south side, that wasn't about like, oh, we hate these people. No, it's just these big financiers are running out of things to make money on.
Right. Yeah. That's.
I wish I had a better prognosis. But
No, I know, man. It's a little bit of a fatalistic outlook, and an outlook of reality for those of us that don't have the eye and the expertise that you do. I can take what you're saying and what you've told us and apply it to salad and go. Is that safe to say? Like, was salad and go part of the models that you're talking about?
Yeah, it was a private equity firm that, you know.
I love salad.
A lot of
them. They're always busy too, which I don't understand. Like they just peeled out.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. A lot of those places don't make their profit in the product. They make the money in the build out of the facilities.
That's crazy.
And the land grabs. You know, it's kind of a real estate play in a lot of ways. You know, they have the contract. You know, there's that backwards salad and go on 65th and May that they accidentally built backwards because, you know, they found the they found the cheapest contractor to come in and put it in there, and like had some dyslexic contractor that's like, oh, okay. But yeah, they make money either way. And I did a deal with Sean Cummings talking about 7 Brew Coffee, and he explained how it works. They get the contract to go and build, and it's overwhelming how it's working, and it's tough.
It doesn't seem sustainable at all. And
No.
Whenever I look at the wealth gap, I just don't understand why there's not more opportunities that would go to closing the wealth gap. But I mean, it's a power play. There's a lot of powerful people that are making these moves, and let's not act like they're not supported by politicians. This is a perfect segue into my next question for you, Steve. What do you think about Oklahoma politicians? Do you think state leadership is doing enough for the working class people?
Well, you have to be really close to the politicians and the people that work for them and the people on the periphery to understand this culture. It's really, at this point, Democrat Party is nothing more than a jobs program. That's why you never see anyone talking about really substantial issues. A lot of it is just a reaction to a century of exploitation of Oklahoma by the elite coastal financial interests. I spoke about the Dust Bowl was predatory loans given to farmers by New York banks who knew that they would not be able to sustain those properties. And so they use it as a way to seize control of their lands. That's back when Oklahoma had a radical, tradition of agrarian, civic-minded, and I don't want to use any terms that might scare people off.
Right.
But I mean, and you deal with a century of exploitation. What do you expect?
Right. Yeah.
And John, the important thing John Dewey said about all this is that politics and government are the shadow cast over society by big business. And people are trained from an early age to attack the government and blame the government. But it's just the shadow cast over society by people like Clay Bennett and the equity firms and all that. And you want to change the structure, you have to change the substance, not the shadow. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know how to answer this. State government is just it's just reactionary, and it's opportunistic. I know, I won't name names, but I know a few people that have literally run just because they need a job, and it's a good job. It's a good paying job. It's got benefits. It's got status. What I do is thankless because I'm not in an official position. If I was doing this shit in an official position, oh, hello, thank you for all you do for the community, blah, blah, blah.
Right, yeah.
But they eat that shit up. They love going to the store and being seen by someone. Oh, thank you for all you do for the community is go eat at Red Prime Steakhouse with lobbyists, and like you get. So it's really just a self-perpetuating situation of madness. But the thing is, it's still very open, and it takes a lot to make it work. Yeah. And we have had so long to be able to do something about this. And there's so many ways you can address your grievances and try to make things better, but it just hasn't happened. And so now Oklahoma government and like the people that are running for governor, I mean, what the hell are you even talking about? Like they don't say anything that means anything. They're like, watch Chip Keating.
I have to agree with you, man.
It's like empty. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And And that's what this system loves. They love those people that just vomit up platitudes and don't address anything substantial, and give people hope when it's fantasy. Like Hedges
Right.
says, if your hope is not based in reality, it's not hope, it's fantasy.
Hmm.
And we've got a lot of work to do, but like we have to start addressing what's really happening. And the
Yeah.
fact that, you know, our senior living facilities, our kids' sports, our Martin Nature Park is now open 5 days a week instead of 7 days a week. We're seeing these, we're seeing so much, and everyone's just,
Nonchalantly, like ignoring it, missing it. Um, now let's talk about what it is that's keeping people from being involved, because you mentioned it in our preliminary call. People are seeing what's going on. They just don't. They're not reacting to it. And I told you, or I mentioned in our call, hey, is that a form of conditioning? And you said no, it's trauma. Talk a little bit about that, and what you mean by it, how trauma could keep people from being involved into being keep people from being involved with evolution and evolving our country into a
well,
better place.
yeah, I think the whole mental health aspects of things are you have to be real careful with,
Yeah.
because we're seeing mental health being turned into an amenity. Like they have like
Yeah.
a little machine downtown where you can go and talk to some robot about how you feel or whatever. And then we have all these pop-ups for people to go and talk about. But yeah, your brain is conditioned to deflect and shut down when certain things come to it. We're kind of conditioned in that sense. And when people talk about local politics or the Chamber of Commerce, that somatic shutdown happens in people's brains. It's if you read like Gabor Mate, who the real professionals might say is pop psychology, but there's plenty of evidence that there are things that happen in people's brains when they're presented with certain things.
Yeah.
And it's in a sense engineered like that. There's so much talk about Trump or Ryan Walters and people are safe to talk about that because it's acceptable and everyone agrees. And it's why Hannah Arendt called, in her book Eichmann in Jerusalem, it wasn't, she went to the trial of Eichmann, and it wasn't the foaming at the mouth Hitler monster that made everything happen. It was the people in the background doing the bureaucratic work and things like that. And so you want to make a difference. You don't go after the foaming at the mouth monster. You go after the people in the background. But that's hard, and it
Yeah.
takes a lot of work, and
Right.
it's thankless. So understanding those dynamics is like, it's a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there are people who can articulate it better than me, but it really does go back to the spiritual tradition of the Bible or any others, that like these forces around us. It's incredible. And I did a 26-week exile and return study over at St. John's, and going through Haggai and Ezra and Esther and all that, and just like, shocking. It's the same stuff, especially in Haggai, in the return, and then start on the temple, and then 16 years go away, building paneled houses and stuff like that. That's exactly what happened in Oklahoma City. We had such an opportunity in 2009 to change the trajectory of this country when the thunder came, and we could have said no to giving all the money to the billionaires, let them do it themselves. And we didn't. And ever since then, look at Oklahoma City. We're building paneled houses. We're not tending to the least among us, other than in maybe a few mental health forums where people get thanked for being great community leaders. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's
No.
hard to articulate.
No, no, no. You're good. I get where you're going, man. It's we're in special times, and we're expecting people that are in leadership roles to rise up to the occasion and to really know what moment we're in. I think a lot of our leaders are missing this moment and being able to provide the nuance that's necessary that'll carry us over into the next century. But it will, to me and in my opinion, take conversations like these, difficult ones. I know we're in a microwave learning society. So, Steve, we're at our 40-minute mark. I've got more than 4 more questions. I'm going to narrow it down to 2. Let's go ahead and plan
Okay.
for episode 2. We got to keep this thing rolling
Okay.
because I think that as long as we're able to look at the equity and the economy from a normal person's standpoint, an everyday average person standpoint, we can mix that in with some experts. Then I think we have an opportunity to close in the wealth gap, because the wealth gap, whenever I see it, I don't see it as a race, even though that it's labeled as race, a racial wealth gap, because there are a lot of white people that are at the 50% bottom half of our country's
Yeah.
income earners. And so I feel like if we can pay attention to, like you said, the least of us, lift that bottom floor, then we'll be better off as a country. But with all that being said, man, what's your outlook on America? Are we declining, evolving, or are we heading toward a new chapter? I know you've kind of sounded fatalist, but I want to hear what your answer is. And on the other side, I want to know what would happen if we don't change, and what could happen if we do make some changes. So it's a loaded ass question. Good luck. Or I can break it down. What does America look?
No, I like Antonio Gramsci's what he said 100 years ago. The old world is dying. The new world struggles to be born. Now is a time of monsters. I mean, that defines it right there. We are certainly in the very last moments of whatever we're in and whatever's coming next, and it's very much to be determined. The main thing for about 10 years that I've been talking about is the dollar as the global currency, and then when it is no longer the global currency, we won't be able to service our debt, and then the game is over.
Yep.
And for the things that we talk about like that, it creeps up on you, and then when you're almost there, it just doesn't seem real, because talking about it, it's like, oh, that's probably 30, 40 years away, but everything has happened so fast. I think after COVID, it kind of sped things up, and all the money that was thrown out there that was supposed to go to the people, that all went to big financial firms and their ability to buy up everything. I think the future is incredibly grim unless some very radical steps are taken. I mean, it would take like a Castro style leader who would shut down all these private equity firms and seize their assets, and how do you do that? Well, we had a micro version of that. My candidate that I was helping out, Matthew Pilares, about using MAPS money to take Rourke franchise owners out of their contracts and subsidize them a little bit to build their own legitimately locally owned businesses.
That sounds cool.
And there are ways to do that. I had thought about doing a national conference of mayors against private equity here in Oklahoma City, and I still might do that next year. Gretchen Morgensen said that she would keynote it. But there are solutions that are kind of abstract and non-institutionally based like that we need to move on. I watched Project Hail Mary last night. I left in the middle of that event at Mayflower Church, and it was very cathartic, because it's a guy that had just an impossible problem that he ended up solving through, really creative, strange ways, and kind of was nice leaving this flock meeting that I said was reactionary civic participation pizza party, and then going and watching a movie and saying, oh yeah, we really need to find solutions to what's happening now. And it takes people coming up with ideas like that, like how do we get out of this financial exploitation model? Because that's all we have. That's what this country is takers and makers. I love that phrase. And yeah, so the prospect's grim, but there is a new world ahead of us, and
Right. It's up for us to shape
you know,
it.
it's yeah, and worst case scenario is pretty bad. I mean, a lot of people are gonna suffer in the next few years. People are already suffering. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hidden very well, and they're finding ways to make it look like homelessness has gone down.
Right.
Which is complete bullshit. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of people are losing their homes. So there are methods. Um, we got to start getting people together, you know, and talking and planning and creating support networks. I'm just not a big institutional guy. We need to be more neighbors than members of coalitions or whatever.
Yeah. No, no, I hear you, man. Organizing is definitely an important factor right now, and nowadays, though, there's this real fear that organizing against the powerful elite might, result in some type of retaliation. I know being a Negro in America, I know for me there's history that's not in my favor, but having the conversations, man, I believe that This Is America podcast serves as a good platform to really kind of organize and just conversate around a better America. Um,
Hmm.
but with our time coming to a close, I wanted to ask you this last question, and this is going to be an actionable step for us Oklahomans. So, for the people that do live here in Oklahoma, regardless of party affiliation or social, what are some political or civic social action steps everyday people can take to become more involved in making a difference, regardless of your party affiliation?
Well, I'm a big fan of going to city council and speaking at citizen presentation. That's people don't understand what an incredible tool that is, because you're there at a podium, you have the attention not so much of the horseshoe, but of the citizenry, because your presentation is made public on Channel 20 on YouTube. You normally have a few news people there who are always looking for an angle that will be happy to talk to you about what you discussed. And if you can put something together that offers solutions, offers addressing real issues, do a quick 3-minute presentation, you're going to get a lot of attention. You're going to get people coming to you. And I mean, it's if things collapse and we'll look back in history and say like, oh, wait, we had that.
Yeah.
We could have gone up there. And then, you know, there's a lot of tools for organizing right now. Like we have an amazing library system, you know. Every library has rooms that you can rent for $10 an hour, and you can do whatever you want in there as long as it's, you know, legal.
Right.
Like I've had many times where I've just had a documentary I love, and I'm like, oh, people need to see this, so I'll go rent a room and then I'll show it and invite people to come. Another thing that isn't known, you know, in my digging with the Chamber of Commerce, Chamber of Commerce runs Visit OKC via the CVB, and they get a ton of money to promote the city, blah, blah, blah. But part of the money that they have, they're required to let people submit a form for them to fund and help you promote your event.
Mm.
Now, and I was talking with Kevin Perry one day about this, and he's like, oh, yeah, nobody knows about that because that's just for their friends. Well, and that's the truth. But just think about this. You have like a cause or something you want to promote, or you want to get people together. You have the ability to arrange an event, go to the Chamber of Commerce, fill out a form, and they can give you a good amount of money to promote and put on your event. There's so many tools right now for people who want to make a difference. And, you know, whether it's going to city council, speaking, putting on an event at the library, using the resource of the chamber to, you know, and also Chamber of Commerce has that contract, and a lot of it goes to salaries and things like that. Someone should step up and challenge them on that contract next year. I would love to see someone out there who's good at organizing, who's good at putting together organizations to take that CVB contract away from the chamber, because at this point they're getting $18 million a year. Just think, and it's so incredibly inefficient.
Yeah.
3.5 million of that goes to salaries. And if you go on their website, it's a joke. If you go on their YouTube, there's like 3 views of every video. If there's someone out there that has the ability to create an organization that can put together a proposal next year to take that contract from them, that's huge. And that's kind of everything right now.
Yeah.
Everything is wide open at this point.
Yeah.
And if good people can just step up and do the right thing, they can seize control of these institutions as Sinclair seized control of the Thunder broadcasts. And there's no simple solutions. And I'm kind of speaking in the abstract, but that's the only way. I mean, that's the only way is for creative solutions to these problems, because the same old ways of the not-for-profit industrial complex, starting some organization, getting a grant, that's not it anymore.
Yeah.
It never was.
There you have it, folks. You've heard it from himself, the man himself, Steve Hunt. And guys, listen, a lot of this stuff might have went over your head. Slow it down, run it back, slow it down. But there's a position and a place that we all play in making this a better state and a better country. And unfortunately, it starts in our economy, and what, some of the people that are coming into our state are allowed to do sometimes just leaves the people that are at the very bottom out to, eat that loss, or take on take on the worst of it, the brunt of it, while these other companies, private companies, you just get to dip out of town and go set up shop somewhere else. So there's a lot to what Steve talked about. It might take a second listen, so if you've got the time, do it. But it is for the sake of our future. I think it's important that we look at some of the things that we consider sacred and really kind of look at them from a deeper perspective. I'm a Thunder fan. I love you, Steve. I barely know you, but I don't know how much more you're going to change me as being a fan. But in terms of how the money's being moved, I'd like to get a piece of some of that action. You got anything you want to say?
The old, eat at Brahms, don't eat at Sonic. Go to Zero Tolerance Coffee, don't go to Starbucks. Support local. Everyone, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, okcsteve@gmail.com, or Super Bowl Steve H on Instagram, and Super Bowl Steve Hunt on TikTok. I'm no longer on Facebook. My account was deactivated 2 days before mayoral filing in another bizarre turn of events.
Wow.
I hopefully will be having a new zine out in coffee shop soon.
Nice.
After being shut down on Facebook, I realized that you can't shadow ban a zine. So that's something that's needed right now.
Let's go.
Yeah.
There you have
it. Well, thanks for having me. And
yes.
Reach out.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyone has any questions, please reach out. I love answering questions and talking to people. So I hope that we can all meet up in person sometime. We should actually talk about maybe doing something at the library someday, because I really want to try out this Chamber of Commerce event promotion thing. And I'd like to create an event, go through the process of having them sponsor it and promote it, and see how that goes. But yeah, there's a lot that needs to be discussed, but yeah.
Well, let's do it, man. Steve,
all right.
I'm supporting you from social media. Now, if they get to shadow banning you, brother, we're gonna have to move our relationship to private. No, I'm just joking. I believe in what you're doing, man. And no disrespect from my end, and I can't wait till part 2. So this is gonna turn into a complete series.
Yeah.
I think if we can root out some of our corruption to at least by 10%, this is gonna be a better country. So I appreciate everything
Yeah.
that you added to the conversation, Steve, and we'll talk soon, brother.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care, man. Later.